For the information and karakia for our council meeting today. Whakatake te hau ki te uru, whakatake te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai, ihi akia nā te atakura, he hio, he huka, he hohu, ti hei, mauri ora. Let us affirm today that we as councillors will work together to serve the citizens of Selwyn District, to always use our gifts of understanding, courage, common sense, wisdom and integrity in all our discussions, dealings and decisions so that we may solve problems effectively. May we always recognise each other's values and opinions, be fair-minded and ready to listen to each other's point of view. In our dealings with each other, let us always be open to the truth of others and ready to seek agreement, slow to take offence and always prepared to forgive. May we always work to enhance the well-being of Selwyn District and its communities. We will. So today we have a couple of apologies and note that Malcolm Lyle, Deputy Mayor, is joining us via Zoom. Welcome, Malcolm. And Councillor Miller and Councillor Hassan are apologies. To move Councillor Alexander, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Epihar, all those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Are there any conflicts of interest that people would like to raise that haven't already been listed on the register? There are none. Confirmation of minutes. Someone to move those minutes are true and accurate. Councillor McInnes and Mugford. And note, Councillor Alexander, there are a few changes that just needed to be added and documents added to those minutes. So if you'd like to talk to that now.
Yes. In item 3 of the previous agenda, section 4 referred to a trial removal of overdue library book charges, which was included in the report, and I asked that this extract be included in the minutes for completeness. In item 4, the Kiwi water treatment facility, that the Commissioner's report be included in the minutes so that people can find it. And then in the public forum, 3 of us stepped away from the table because declaring an interest, and what wasn't in the minutes was we stepped away because we will be commissioners on the hearings for the district plan. And I felt that it's important that that be added to the minutes as an explanation of why we declared an interest. It wasn't clear from the minutes what the interest was.
Yeah, so those things can be added to the record. Councillor Reid?
I think that's a good point that Councillor Alexander's brought up, because I noted that down as well to make it quite clear as to why we were doing that.
Yep. Okay, so with those changes, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, declare it carried. Item number 4 is the Chief Executive's report. Thanks, David.
Mr Mayor, councillors, thank you and good afternoon. So the first item on my report today seeks suspension of standing orders for the draft LTP hearing and deliberations meetings. Under clause 4.2 of standing orders, the meeting can't continue for more than 6 hours or beyond 10:30, and certainly that later wouldn't be happening. More importantly, no meeting can sit for more than 3 hours continuously without a break of 10 minutes. What we're suggesting is that we suspend these for the ease of meeting continuity, but also to fit in with the public speaking schedule. Now, submissions to the LTP close on Friday of this week. As of 12 noon today, we had 390 plus submissions, and we would expect a significant number has traditionally come forward in the last 48 hours, and indeed over the weekend. Only 16 people are seeking to speak at this stage, which is down quite a lot on that number. Now, we are scheduled to hold meetings for hearings, Mr Mayor and councillors, on Thursday the 13th and Friday the 14th. We do still intend to stick to that schedule, albeit based on the number of speakers, and bearing in mind we receive all submissions during those days as well. But I suspect that we may have a shorter day on Friday. We'll roll forward 1 week to the 20th and the 21st is when we have our planned deliberations. So the agenda for the 13th and 14th will be released to you on Thursday of next week. That will be submissions only, and staff comments will be in the agenda released to you the week after that. So that will be on Wednesday, Thursday the 13th. That will be released, and that will have staff comments to assist in those deliberations as well.
Thank you. So just on that, it's important that staff have an opportunity to clearly think through the matters that have been raised through submissions, but that they are not present for councillors to be clouded by what the response might be from staff when we're listening to submitters who are coming in and talking with us. And so that's why the delay in us receiving the council staff's responses isn't pre-hearings, it's pre-deliberations for that reason. And thinking about 2 days of deliberations, we'll leave the 2 days in the diary at the moment, but my hope is that we would work through deliberations on Thursday the 20th and wouldn't need Friday the 21st, but we'll just have to see how the days go and the points that need to be considered on that Thursday.
And the opportunity is there to have a longer meeting as well. So if we need to go into the early evening to save a day the next day, then so be it. I encourage everybody to basically keep that Thursday or both Thursday evenings free. Some information on the Selwyn Aquatic Centre update, which I'll take as read. The next item I do want to speak to, though, Mr Mayor, particularly for the benefit of those who are on Zoom or Skype, and it's around Selwyn's economy, which has continued to grow very, very strongly in the last 12 months. The latest infometrics figures that we have available to us show that Selwyn District Council's economy grew by 1.7% last year, interestingly compared with a 2.6% drop nationally. Consumer spending in the year to December 2020 in Selwyn grew by 2.1%, and nationally at the same time it fell by 3.2%. The infometrics figures show that construction and agriculture and food processing were the big factors in the strength of Selwyn economy, as we would have expected. Interestingly, the number of houses sold last year was up by 31%, and 34% more residential building consent applications were received by council during that time. And almost a quarter of our staff, of our workforce, 23%, are employed in agriculture and food processing. So really good news story stuff in that. With respect to climate change, next item on my report, in May of this year, ECAN will be launching a program called It's Time Canterbury, which is designed to build climate change resilience across Canterbury. There'll be a lot of PR associated with this campaign, including on our own website, and we're of the view that a collective voice right across Canterbury will give strength to this campaign, and certainly very, very happy to be supporting that. Item number 5 is preparedness for emergencies, and this is to make publicly known some scheduled meetings to talk about preparedness. We've heard about AF8 and how that may be a wee bit closer than we had first thought. Wednesday the 19th of May at 7 p.m. in the Darfield Rec Centre is the first of those meetings. 18th of August at Lincoln Event Centre at the same time, and 3 November here at Selwyn Sports Centre. And the sessions are being led by council staff members who are very experienced in the field of emergency preparedness and management. And item number 6, Mr Mayor, is some proposed changes to the delegations manual, just reflecting changes to staffing in those particular areas. Happy to take any questions, and there are 3 recommendations on page 62.
Thanks, David. And just an update on the submissions and engagement that we've had on the long-term plan so far. I think that the highest number of the highest engaged topic has been Darfield wastewater, which has received about 4 or 5 times as much engagement as any other topic. And the other areas that have been high have been around water and transportation in the Prevalton Community Centre. Have been the other 3 that sit in that space where people are concerned. I just note the piece around being prepared for emergencies. I've been reminded in the last 2 days just how easy it can be to get complacent about emergencies and being prepared. And I don't know if you've listened to the podcast called Collapse, but even 10 years on, it's a focus on the CTV building in Christchurch. And even 10 years on, it's hard listening. And just thinking about all the things that, even though we live in a country that we know experiences earthquakes who have killed hundreds of people, we can still forget what that could mean for us today, this afternoon, tonight, and the importance of being prepared. So you recommend listening to the podcast. It's a good look back at something that was a very tragic event in our city, but also just what that might mean for us thinking forward and how we get prepared and how we remain cognizant of the risk that sits underneath us all the time. Mark Alexander.
Yeah, just looking at page 67, the dog control officers and rangers. Whilst we're striking a name off, we've had an internal advisement of a transfer of a staff member into that team. I just wondered why that name couldn't have been there at the same time to add Kylie's name as Amanda's is struck off.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, totally agree. Simple answer, Councillor Alexander, is that at the time this report was written, she had not been appointed to that position. She has now.
Can we add the name today?
Yes, I was going to say, if you're moving the recommendation, just with the amendment to Kylie's name be added.
I'll move the recommendation with the addition of the name of the new member of the animal control team. I'm not sure what Kylie's middle name might be.
We'll find out. Yep.
Is there a seconder for the Gallagher? Thank you. Any further discussion on the CEO's report? All those in favour of the recommendations there with the amendment, as Councillor Alexander has just noted, say aye.
Right. So just to say, Sam, if the amendment's in all appropriate places, there's a number of other places that should be added as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And anyone against that recommendation, say no. Declare it carried. Item number 5 is the change of classification of part of the reserve in Lincoln, and Bianca and Julian are here. Yeah, moved by Alexander, seconded Murray Lemon. Is there any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Thank you for coming. We have the solid waste monthly update as item 6. And that we receive, there's no decision making, substantive decision making, it's about receiving. But Andrew, if you want to come to the front, is there a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Yeah. Bland and Mcford. Is there anything within the report that people would like to discuss or have a little bit more detail on? Councillor Mugford. Andrew, if I could ask you to come to the front of the room then. Thank you.
Almost got away with it.
Outside the toilets there, there's been a lot of complaints about contaminants then. Has that been sorted and has there been an answer for that?
I recall it being raised. I don't know where it got to actually. I can't recall. I'll have to trawl back through what I did after we spoke. I know I spoke to the contractor, yes, and asked if that was an issue and whether they were checking or not. I just can't remember what their response was.
Because it came up at the community board meeting again.
Did it?
So just, yeah,
Okay.
if an answer something.
Yeah, no problem. I'll make that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Andrew, a lot of work's been done in the Pines resource recovery space, and we've had a visit down there to look at some of the asphalt and moving of the recycling facilities. The next phase is to build some buildings, education space and a reuse shop and those sorts of things. Your next report to us will include a bit more detail on that. Just wondering where those projects are up to, and yeah, people will be interested.
Yep, sure. So there was just a really brief comment about where we're at with the architects, but yeah, should have some nice pictures and concept designs to present next month. So yeah, should be good. If anyone's interested in coming down, I can grab a van and take you if you haven't been for a while. Yeah, right. Maybe I'll flick an email out and circulate it and see who's available and wants to come.
That'd be good. And just note that ECAN councillors are also visiting a couple of locations in Selwyn, one at iZone, and we are interested in coming to the Resource Recovery Park too. So that's, I think, been teed up for probably in a couple of weeks' time. And they'll be coming down to have a look at both of those. And I'll just say, Andrew, I was speaking with the Mayor of Westlands last week, and he commented on how well the Arthur's Pass recycling space looks, the area that it's in, the tidy way that it's kept, and the ability for people that live in that space to have a recycling service that seemed, from his outside perspective, to work really well, and also provided a space for a wee snooze if you're tired on the way home to the West Coast. So well done on what's been provided there, and it's good to see that there, and as well as the change and movement in Castle Hill as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. No further questions. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. Next we have Murray Washington presenting on behalf of Andrew Maisie and Mark Chamberlain. The Transportation Monthly Update. Oh, Mark's here. Oh, good. Sorry, Mark, I didn't see you over the back there. Mark Chamberlain, if you want to come to the front, that would be great. Murray had his head down. I just thought I'd see if he was listening. So we're on pages 87.
Yeah, tēnā koutou. Yeah, I was just on a phone call. I thought I had plenty of time. I was pretty much going to take the report as read on my section of it. There's not much in there, but I've taken any questions on what's been reported there. So not aware of too many issues that come out of it. And the only thing I was going to have was Anzac Day, the services on the weekend. Haven't heard anything back from any issues compared to a couple of years ago. So hopefully that all went okay.
Absolutely.
Yes, not a question for you, Sam. It's probably perhaps maybe a suggestion of a request for you, item 4.6 on the State Highway Review. I'm just thinking I'm not particularly satisfied with that answer. What are we, 18 years since that last review was done? I just wonder whether it would be timely for you to perhaps pen a response to them and say we think it is actually due, that looking at the growth in our district and the changes of patterns of, or certainly not so much the patterns, but the nature and the volume of traffic going in on our roads now, the classifications of what is and isn't a highway might well be up for review. I think we probably need to be a bit more forceful about that than just accept that answer.
Well, happy to facilitate that. Mark, I don't know whether you're able to talk about special purpose roads. We, again, I was visiting the top of the South Island and West Coast Councils last week, and in Bolla, they've got I think it was a special purpose road was what it was called, and it's the road from Westport to Karamea. It's currently a state highway, and NZTA is exiting out of that being a state highway. And I can't remember, there might have been 9 roads across the country, and 5 or 6 of them are in the South Island, and that's one of them. A fairly major piece of road through some pretty tricky terrain. And it's the only one way in, one way out for the people that live there. And the transition from NZTA is, let's not call it a state highway, but let's call it a local road that we 100% fund. And we'll do up some bridges for you so that you know the condition of the road. And at some point, we'll reduce our spending at 100% down to their FAR rate, which admittedly is, I think it was 70% as opposed to about 51. So they do get a lot more help than we do. But it just sort of spoke of NZTA getting out of the things, not getting into the space. If we're looking at NZTA taking on extra state highway responsibilities, I think we'll be pushing it. Let's have the conversation, Murray. Let's ask those questions. But the view is on a lot of other roads that strategically might seem more important than some that we're talking about, where there are multiple options for our traffic. It could be a little bit difficult. I don't know, Mark, if you are aware of any of that discussion. No. Councillor Alexander?
Thank you. 2 points. 5.4 speed limits, with a review coming up, or proposed schedule for changes for next month. Just in light of the ministerial comments last week, that will include reviews of speed limits around schools. Won't include...
Not as part of this review. That discussion has to follow on with this new setting of speed limits rule, which is out for consultation at the moment. There's some meetings around the country over the next month. And then once that rule is in place, which allows those to be done, so it'll be part of that whole discussion, and it needs to be part of a regional speed management plan as well as nationally, so that we're actually being consistent on how we're doing it. There's still quite a bit of work to be done. I don't think there'd be much opposition to lower speed limits outside schools, but it's how they get it put in place and be consistent and have all the right signage and how far past those schools they go, not just the school frontage but the approach roads, where there still needs a bit of work. I know that. I just had a discussion with Whakatane staff this morning about that. So there's still a lot of work to do in that space. So it's not part of this review. This is interim to get a bit of a tidy up before the new rule comes in place, the new register comes into place.
Okay, so any estimate of a time frame around those school speed limit type reviews? Is it going to be the end of this year, this time next year?
Well, the signing of the rule is planned for November at this stage, but if it's not done in November, which it may not be, it'll probably be February, just given that Christmas break. So it'll be then. But so there's a lot of tying in of the rule, the new speed limit register, new speed management guide associated with the rule, and speed management plans, involvement of a regional plan for the regional through the regional transport committee. So there's a lot of things to come into play to actually for that whole. The idea is to have consistency, at least regionally, but preferably nationally, because currently we're not quite there yet. So, and as part of that regional, the speed management plan is a 3-year and a 10-year plan. So it's sort of where you want to be in 10 years, but what you're going to changes you're going to make in the first 3 years and that sort of thing, which will include schools. So we should have similar signage and similar changes being made in Selwyn as we are in Waimakiriri or Ashburton or Huranui or Kaikoura or Christchurch. So we should be doing a similar thing at a similar time and try and coordinate.
Okay, so sometime. Second question, it's not, and it's an item that's not in your report, but it occurred to me the other day, as we develop the town centre on Tennyson Street, should we be looking at prohibiting heavy transport that is simply transiting through that stretch of Tennyson Street? I've noticed in the last few days a number of particularly heavy truck and trailers that are just simply proceeding straight through Tennyson Street, and if that's going to be our town centre and a pedestrian friendly environment, should we be considering making that banned for heavy transport unless they're doing deliveries in that space? There's plenty of now other roads they can use to get round that stretch of Tennyson Street. I just think if we're intending that to be our premier town centre, heavy truck and trailers travelling up and down it, even at 30k, isn't appropriate.
It's certainly something we should discuss as part of the town centre ongoing project, and as long as there's alternative routes for them, which there is, they can go Rolleston Drive, then that's okay, but and still allow for deliveries to those shops there.
Hello, Andrew. Well, Murray thought he was going to have to come up and do it. But I second Councillor Alexander talking about that, because I've actually said that myself and have been meaning to bring it up. And these are massive trucks carrying framing and stuff like that, which would take up a fair width of the road themselves anyway. So it's dangerous for them to be coming down. I mean, me on my bike as well. Now, just talking about the government's speed limit setting or that they're going through, are we looking to make a submission on that? Because what they're looking to do is what we have tried to do a few years ago, that NZTA themselves were not in a position that we could progress down that path of having lower speed limits around schools. So are we looking to put in a submission that's part of council or part of a greater Canterbury-wide submission or something like that?
Well, as part of council, yes.
Yes, sorry Sam, I should have thought of this earlier on. I had 2 questions, I haven't got it written down. Item 5.6, Mark Tomutu Rally, have we had a response back from them yet with the, is there any update on that? First part of the question.
No, just after a bit more detail on the cost that's been put for the repairs, and then we'll get money out of them. So.
Yep. So just as a bit of the context, I'll say summons, but I was asked to attend a meeting of a number of user groups before Christmas, and they'd expressed concerns about the cost, obviously for a small club doing this. And what I said I would undertake would be to facilitate a meeting, once they decided when they were going to schedule this. Unfortunately, I got notification of that one day before the event, so that obviously didn't happen, Mark. Otherwise, we could have had a sit down and gone through it prior. And you may well have done that. I don't know what the process was, but just as a suggestion, I'd said to them, we were awaiting the outcome of the roading contract, and I said it might be an opportunity for them to meet with the roading contractor and perhaps ask for some sort of, I guess, sponsorship with them. And do you think that's something that we could still facilitate, Mark? Do you think that's an opportunity to do that? I know it's that I'm asking you for an undertaking about a private company, but do you think that there is an opening for us to achieve something like that by sitting around the table?
I don't think it's for us to do. I think they can approach the contractor directly, just like other clubs do for sponsorship, whether it's rugby or cricket, whatever.
Absolutely. there's no impediment to them being able to do that is, I guess, really the question from your perspective. Quite happy. Yeah, no, thank you. That'll be the suggestion I'll take back.
Murray.
If you might, I wouldn't mind making a bit of comment on the state highway review process. And obviously, to become a state highway, you have to meet certain criteria. So, and as you correctly, as Andrew noted in the report, there hasn't been a formal state highway review for a number of years. But in terms of the criteria for becoming a state highway, when a road meets that criteria and got added on, ipso facto, there was other state highways that suddenly didn't currently meet the criteria for a state highway, and they basically dropped off the state highway list. They didn't drop off straight away, they became special purpose roads, and generally the transition could be up to 20 years where they received funding as they worked down. So all I was going to say, there was no surprises in special purpose roads coming to an end and becoming transferred back to the local authority. It's about making your best case for roads to be added.
Thank you. So can you draft the letter for me to be able to sign along with what Marilyn was talking about before, and just pushing for a review and understanding when that might start? Thank you. Andrew, we've done the second part of the report. Was there anything earlier on that you'd like to discuss and present to councillors today?
And just a touch on a couple of things. Thank you. So just in regards to in the report, the reference to NZTA and our forthcoming funding, as I said in there, that we're experiencing further delays getting information from NZTA while they work through their funding negotiation processes for the next NLTP. So that's likely we won't get an indication until the end of May, and the likelihood now that they won't officially release that information until perhaps August, which is obviously after when we would be adopting our LTP. So just to make you aware of that. I think, as I may have mentioned to a few of you councillors before, I think we've got to remember that we still have 49% of our funding in our program in terms of the local share. So it's not all lost in regards to the fact that if NZTA do cut back in certain areas, we in theory still have our local share in play, which can be utilised in terms of at least doing or carrying on with something further, particularly in the road maintenance renewal areas. And we've also had some indication just in the last day or so around the road safety community programs, where they've now highlighted where councils have gone above 6.5%, and now they've been parked in terms of a further review in regards to that sort of funding aspect. So I can't give you any further information because I have none. Just in regards to Colgate, the road legalisation process, everything's been signed off. All we have to do is put some notices in the public newspapers, the Melbourne Record being the one that we've chosen to basically close that loop, and then it's all done and dusted in terms of the gazetting process will be complete. The other one that I'll just touch on too is the Rolleston State Highway 1 access. As I've mentioned in there is a consultant team that now been engaged by NZTA to do the detailed business case, being a consortium of Stantec and Jacobs. We had a really good day last Thursday with NZTA and the consultant team. Literally, they came out here and we walked all the sites and looked at everything, and everybody to keep everybody on the same page. So there's going to be a lot of work involved in this, and there's going to be a lot of heads trying to work all these things out. And while we've been working to some concept plans, the devil is going to be in the detail in terms of how a lot of this is going to ultimately have to work out and the options around it. Probably the last thing I can talk about is just the in terms of the MRT process. I believe SEAG were given a briefing on that yesterday, and I think from what I saw in my emails late last week, a meeting has been set up with the council, I think late May, to talk through the findings of the interim report on MRT and also how it relates to the spatial plan and things as well. So it's an interesting exercise to date, and while it maybe has been deemed as being feasible, I think is the word that everybody is using, there's going to be some significant levers that have to be pulled to make it work, for instance, around land use. We've just also done a little bit of work around the operating costs associated with it, because that's something that the consultant had considered before, and that certainly puts that into some perspective as well when you're talking about systems that are going to cost over $1 billion and annual operating costs in the tens of millions. So it's not to be sneezed at.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions of
Sam?
Yes.
Yes, I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Excellent. Fire away, Mel.
Yeah, first one to Mark. I'm very aware of the fact that we're going out with bylaw to change the speed limits, and I will have a chat with you offline about some concerns my local residents have. And just to give you all a heads up, there'll be a deputation coming for a public forum from our community in the next few weeks concerning road safety issues around Brimton. My issue, Mark, is that there's a lot of truckers bringing bulk grain through our township from the grainfields of Southbridge, and they tend to be using their exhaust brakes in a 30k and 50k zone in the middle of the township because they're above the tune of their exhaust pipe. Is there anything we can do about controlling the use of exhaust braking in residential areas in that bylaw?
Yes, we can. It's a regulatory issue. So it'll need a report come to council specifically to have an area set aside for restricting using of air brakes. So yes, that can be done.
Okay, I'll have a chat to you offline about that.
Yep.
Hold the meeting up. And the other one is.
Yeah, thanks, Malcolm, for those comments. Just if I can elaborate on a couple of them, because it's been interesting with the submissions that we've been getting on the draft long-term plan. A number of submissions have been coming through from Prebbleton folk, particularly talking around safety issues and speed through the township. And as I have been formulating my comments that will be going back to the council in regards to reviewing the submissions, we have in our 10-year program a plan to lower the speed limit in conjunction with supporting engineering works. That's in the Safe Network program with NZTA. It's not in this current or this coming NLT period, but in the next. So that's already sort of lined up. And in regards to your comments about the pedestrian crossing, yes, a lot has been discussed recently in regards to that proposed development, retail development that is in Offsprings Road there, and the positioning of the crossing. And between myself and the consenting team, we've done a lot of work to try and make sure we've got that issue covered off the best that we can. And it's great to hear that the developer has also confirmed to you his willingness to work with us. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Malcolm, for speaking up. And if there's other things that through the meeting you need to see, I don't actually have your face in front of me with your hand up. So thank you for doing that, but just use your voice and pipe up as required. Councillor Ipaha.
Tēnā kōrua, Mark and Andrew. My question is in 5.5.1, footpath extensions, and just wondering if in the program, if there's opportunity for that to be extended, and opportunity for smaller communities to be included or increased in scope.
Thank you. The footpath extension, discretionary footpath extension program was born from the 2018 walking and cycling strategy, and it's a accompanying action plan. And at the time we agreed with the council that we would allocate $400,000 to that program annually. So and for the new LTP going forward, we've actually dropped that to about 300,000, and it will run for, I think, another 4 or 5 years. That's on the basis that we were getting through the, I suppose, the routine or easy footpath extensions that program first identified. I think what we're coming up against now is where we're starting to get into the larger, more complex ones. And my thought going forward is that we may actually start identifying those as separate projects and having them funded separately. Like, for instance, I was aware of a request from somebody in Southbridge that wanted a footpath along Gordon Street, and it's about 1 kilometre long. So it sort of falls outside the preview of our what we're intending that sort of discretionary funding to do. So that's sort of where we're at.
Thank you.
No further questions. A mover and seconder to receive the transportation report. Reid and Gallagher. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Thank you very much for the presentation today. Item number 8 is a property report. It's on page 98 of today's agenda. Again, no substantive decisions, just to receive the report. There's a number of updated comments. Douglas, thanks for adding those into the report, and it's good to see the work that's taken place over the last 4 weeks, and no doubt in the last couple since the report was written. And I'll hand the floor to you and you can take us through. Thank you.
Thank you, Wish. Yeah, the report has been written a little bit earlier than normal because of leave from a number of key staff during that period before agenda closed. So around 1 or 2 updates. So Aquatic Centre, I've got nothing more to add than what is in there for those items in terms of timing. So that's progressing towards the first area being opened. Denise, there's nothing you've been told about Aquatic, have you? No. Okay.
I did have a question, Douglas.
Yes.
On the Aquatic Centre, it may also relate to the car park gate issue. Over the weekend with the electrical storm and the issues caused there, is whether you want to make any comment about that, or maybe it's more of facilities than a property.
With the Tennyson Street car park problem? Yeah. Yeah, we did have the new gate at Tennyson Street, unfortunately, cramped itself, I suppose. That's not an appropriate word, sorry. With the electric storm, and they locked some cars in. But we did manage to get a workaround reasonably quickly for it. But we've got to be mindful of those sort of things because the electronics them aren't that great, I suppose, and they're easy to get knocked out. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on it.
There was an issue at the Aquatic Centre similarly that it appears that a spike caused a systems failure that was so dramatic that the staff didn't get alerted that it had failed. So whether we still need to keep ensuring that our systems are robust to avoid that issue. I mean, thunderstorms aren't unusual in Canterbury.
So that happened on Saturday's storm, did it? You read that one, Denise? Okay.
Sorry, Denise, can you use your microphone? No one can hear.
The storm on Saturday night caused a power failure, there was no alert to staff until they went on site early in mid-morning on the Sunday. And so they're following it up and investigating as to why there wasn't any early warning signs.
I know one of the fixes we're doing for the gate is putting an uninterruptible power supply UPS into the line just to try and provide some protection there. So I imagine we'll just have to keep looking at those sort of things and making sure that those type of devices did their job, or if they didn't, we upgrade them. Te Aratia, again, we're just obviously working methodically along on a program there, which includes, obviously, you may have seen if you've driven past recently, landscaping now starting to be, topsoil starting to be moved, so we can start to get on with that piece of work. Sports Centre, we're obviously very close to now formally opening, so that's all good news. A few issues just to sort out with the contractor, but nothing major there. Responsible camping. So since we've written this report, the government have asked for some thoughts on freedom camping. So we have a submission being prepared for you to come to the meeting on the 12th of May. I think submissions are due on the 14th of May, I think it is. The other issue is with TIF funding. So TIF funding there on whatever page that is in the agenda, apologies. There is a focus, and it's very clear in the application forms on Kaikoura, Mackenzie, Queenstown Lakes, Fiordland and South Westland areas for funding. So we do have those 5 sites we would suggest. I suppose there are any other sites that he could think of we might apply, or whether you put any priority on those 5 sites, would be appreciated. But I suppose realistically, they have identified where they think the key points New Zealand wide for improved investment is. So I suppose just trying to put some reality that we've done really well. Whether we'll get any more in round 5 might be a little bit uncertain.
Douglas, just on that, the meeting with the West Coast mayors last week, talking about cycling and the amount of activity that's going on the West Coast at the moment because of cycle trails, the Wilderness Trail, Old Ghost Road, and such. They were really, I mentioned to them the work that we were looking to do for the Arthur's Pass to the ocean route. I think it's feasibility study in year 2 of this LTP, that we have to do some more work there. And there's been work done in the past on that, I know, and I'm not sure whether we have applied to this fund for that type of work, but it does connect this side of the island with the West Coast. It's a loose connection to the priority areas, but they were of the view that we should be pushing cycling as much as we, for the benefit that they've been able to receive in cycle spaces, we should be looking to push that as much as we can here to receive a similar benefit. So in some ways it feels like old ground, but we're also wanting to see this delivered, in the discussion at the moment around Darfield to Rolleston connecting, and in a current LTP that connection's all the way up to Springfield. The tricky part's Springfield West, and yeah, I just, for the sake of a little bit of work, to put in a few lines here and maybe get knocked back again, could show a direction of travel that I think we're currently on as council.
Okay, so you'd like some, we'll put some narrative around, it won't be in great detail because we don't have a lot of great detail to put in, so, okay. I'll add that to it. Leaston, Horata, they're obviously just waiting for long-term plan decisions. An update there on the Kiwi Pavilion, as you can see there, so we're just waiting for some costings to come through and what a seismic strengthening work might look like, and whether we would therefore proceed or not with that work. Westmount Community Park, we're just obviously progressing there on a completion of works later this, or probably hopefully this week, and we continue with Reed's Pit in terms of developing that site.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
Just reminded me, so we've got Broadfield School quite interested in assisting with the planting, and talk about some community plantings to be undertaken over the next 12 months. And I know we've used Tiara Kakariki, I've been there when they've done it. Have we talked to any of the other schools in Rolleston itself, whether they want to be interested, or any other groups? I mean, Broadfield is obviously sort of in the area, but Reed's Pit is really on the outskirts of Rolleston. And I'm not clear, like, whether we're looking to maybe look at other groups who might be interested in planting trees and stuff as well.
Look, I don't know. There's obviously been some effort by the staff to talk to Broadfield, and that's been going to be very successful there for us. I'll just see how much more planting may need for other schools, but at this stage, I think Broadfield seem to have it under control anyway. So, Prebbleton, so just some update there on the pump track, the process we're following there. We've just signed off on the car parking today for pricing with Blakely, so that's underway as well.
Douglas, just on. Yes, Malcolm.
Yeah, Douglas, I'm reading the report here, and I'm a little bit concerned. This the two tenders for this job, and it was taken to a reserve.
Now, we're happy with the selection made in terms of that contractor and their expertise around it. They were the conforming tender on the day of closure, and we're happy with them and the work that will proceed with them. So I am aware of concerns, but they're not concerns that would make us change our mind in terms of the tender that's been put in by that party. Yeah, we've followed an appropriate tender process, and we believe it's totally acceptable, and we'll monitor the final design process and construction carefully. The final one there, I think, is got the upgrades, which are just progressing, as you'll all know, and then the license there update as to where we are with timing, and a wee bit on EV progress over the past few weeks. That's the end of the report, Your Worship.
Thanks, Douglas. Just the last item there is around upgrading council vehicle fleet, which councillors have sort of talked about having X number of vehicles, by the end of the year and moving towards some changes. Just wondering if we could get an overview of number of vehicles, Ks travelled, so we can sort of see the amount of use of the vehicles that we've got, and just have a report that goes a little bit deeper into that, and then maybe some suggestions from you and your team around what the next couple of years look like for that transition, and how you see that being rolled out.
Yeah, we have a fleet replacement program that supports our long-term plan projections and estimates, so we can easily make that available. It's quite detailed, so we'll need to summarise it up a wee bit later to make it probably a bit more governance level. I'm meeting with Meridian tomorrow about our site here. So yeah, for the next meeting we can give you a summary feel for where that program will be and what it might look like as we roll out. I mean, the biggest issue for us is really we'll go through a fit for purpose process, and in simple terms that's really asking the question, do we need the fleet of utes that we currently have, or can we change the type of vehicles to be fit for purpose for staff? So that's probably the key process over the next few weeks, next few months. Right.
Great, thank you. Mover and seconder to receive the report, Alexander. Seconded, Epiha. Yep. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. There's one other item that I'd like to mention before we close, and that's the passing of former Mayor of Dunedin, Dave Cull, and he was also the president of LGNZ for 3 years and was a big contributor to local government across New Zealand. He was a TV personality for a while, which probably has meant that he's more well known than some of the other mayors around the country, but his leadership, particularly around thinking about the future of local democracy, localism, and ensuring that in the most centralised country in the OECD, we don't continue just to hand things away to Wellington and let control be taken away from local communities. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer last year and passed away yesterday. So just to acknowledge his passing and his contribution to close this meeting. And we have a resolution to exclude the public. Moved Reid and Macfitch. Those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. And we'll adjourn the meeting for